All right, very good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out. My name's Sean Gaskell. Based in North Carolina. I'm doing a tour of libraries in Michigan here, and I'm here to present the West African Kora. The Kora usually has 21 or 22 strings. It is an instrument that is native to the Mandinka people, which are one of about 7 different ethnic groups in the country of Gambia, which is where I went to go study. I've been 3 times, 2008, 2012, and 2018. And so most of the songs I'll play for you are ones that I learned from the 2 teachers that I worked with. And then between the songs, I will be talking about some of the background and the history of the Kora. So you'll get to learn about how it was built and the people who typically play it and what their role is in Mandinka society. And then right before the last song, I'll go ahead and open up the floor for any questions that y'all might have. I'm going to start with a song that's called Hamaba Jata. This song goes back to the early 1700s. And Hamaba Jata was the former king in the region of Kabu, which was the region that was known as that before any of the colonial boundaries were drawn. Currently lands somewhere in the country of present-day Guinea-Bissau. So it's a praise song for him and the work that he did as the king.
Ye
This one's called Miniamba, and this song is written for all those who travel. And so the Mandinka words that I'm singing in this song basically mean when you're in an unfamiliar place, you should be looked after well and taken care of. Miniamba. This one is called Kaira. Kaira in Mandinka means peace. The song was composed on the accordion sometime in the 1920s, and it's become one of the more popular modern day tunes. I'd be walking into the market in Brikama, Gambia, where my teachers live, and
you'd be hearing the song on the radio a lot. So it inspired me to learn Kira.
So you can see that there's quite a few things that go into making the kora. So historically, the kora is about 300 years old. It's the youngest of 3 Mandinka instruments. The 2 that often accompany it are significantly older than its. And these instruments are the ngoni, which is a lute that you play like a guitar. And then you have the balafon, which is a wooden xylophone that's played with one mallet in each hand. The kora is the youngest of the Mandinka instruments, and down at the bottom there's a calabash, which is a gourd that grows very similar to a pumpkin. So they cut it in half and take all the seeds out and dry it in the sun for a couple of weeks, up to a month, just depending on the time of year that you're building. So once it's nice and dried and hollowed out, you would take a wet animal skin, stretch it over the open half, nail it to the backside with upholstery tacks. It's very important that the skin is applied while it still wets, and because if it's even slightly dry, it's probably going to crack, and you just have a kora that won't work because of that. Once the skin's cured, you would have to cut 3 holes into the calabash, and 2 of those holes are so that the neck that I'm holding on to, the longest piece of wood on the instrument, can slide through the top down to the bottom side here. And then the third hole right here is the largest of the three. And that one serves two very important roles. The first is so that sound can come out. And the second is so that money can go in. And the reason that money goes into this hole here is because there's a lot of praise singing that takes place for people that have songs written about them. And I'll get into exactly why that is a little bit later. Down here, we've got an iron ring. So to get that through, you would just take a drill, put a hole through the bottom of the neck, slide the ring through and secure it in place. We've got some nylon cord on this one. The anchor strings go on next. Those are the shorter, dark ones down here. And then each of the plucking strings, all 22 of them, get tied off to individual anchor strings, and then up to the tuning rings along the neck. The bridge right here, otherwise known as the bato in Mandinka, bato, is not actually fixated to the instrument. So if I was going to loosen all the strings by bringing the tuners down the neck, the bato would just come off altogether. There are 6 cuts that are made into the animal skin. 4 of those are for the handlebars that I'm holding. And then the last 2 are for the crossbar that sit perpendicular to the handlebars, and it goes behind the handlebars as well. And all 3 of these pieces of wood help to tighten that animal skin. It's very important that it's tight. What you'll notice is that during the change of the seasons, that skin is going to want to either expand or contract, just depending on which season you're going into. I mean, if you're going into the hot and humid summers, it's going to want to loosen up a little bit, and that makes the bridge sag into the skin, which then changes the position of all of your strings. And it's the change of seasons where you find that it's the most difficult to tune because of that, just because of the shifting bridge. This model of Kora here is what you would see most often if you were in one of the West African countries where it's from, such as Gambia, where I studied, but also Senegal, Mali, Guinea-Bissau, Burkina Faso. So this Kora has been built this way for exactly 100 years, with a few slight modifications between the early 1700s and then. So this Kora, as I mentioned, uses animal skin. It's cow skin. The wood on this Kora is from a tree called kano. The plucking strings are fishing line. Fishing line's been used for 100 years. Before 1920, antelope hide was used for the plucking strings. And then lastly, these tuning rings are called konso. And konso are also cowhide, so you cut thin, long strips, and you have to weave them in a certain way around the neck. And once they dry, each string goes around the konso 4 to 5 times, and then tied off with a regular square knots. And then to tune, you physically have to move them up or down the neck. So moving them up the neck means you're raising the tension of the strings, and vice versa. If you go the other way, I should say raising the pitch of the strings.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Why are those strings just dangling?
So that's excess string. So if you need to create more space between each of the konso, you want to have some extra to either give back to the Kora or take away from the Kora, depending on how much space you're trying to get between which konso. Does that make sense? Yeah, so it's all about positioning, like it's a kind of a physical positioning of each of the konso. So it just helps to have a little bit of extra. So you're not plucking them or anything, it's just there to give extra space too. So, this Kora here was actually built in the US in 2011, and the person who built it raises elk. So they used elk skin instead of cow, so it's a little bit darker in color. The 2 types of wood that this Kora uses are Hadoop and Honduras mahogany. The strings on this one are harp strings instead of fishing line, so it gives a very different sound quality. And the tuning system on this one is more like a guitar, so you just have to twist each of the pegs and the pitch will change. So. It's a lot easier to keep in tune.
I learned this one on my 2018 trip to Gambia, my most recent trip, and this one's called Fantamadi. And so here we're talking about overcoming fear, and while it may present challenges, it's worth a go at it. Fantamadi.
Thank you. So the people who typically play the kora are part of what some might consider to be a class system that exists, because historically people are born into families who for many, many generations do the same exact type of work. And a lot of these types of work are things that we have around here. However, the people who play these instruments, we don't have an equivalent for them here in modern day culture in the United States. And so I speak of the griots, spelled Griots. And a griot is a historian whose cultural responsibility it is to carry forth 800 years worth of history dating back to the founding of the Mandinka Empire. The Kora is most culturally significant because it's one of the primary mediums for telling about their history through a lot of these songs that you hear. So there are a lot of songs that are named after people who helped to fight battles to expand the empire. Others about the battles themselves. And furthermore, like Hamabajata, that first song that I played, people who held some form of political power during the reign or the expansion, I should say, of the empire. That would encompass about 70% of the traditional repertoire, just songs about people. So when I was in Gambia, I would usually see the Kora played at 3 types of events. One was very casual and laid back, and the other 2 were quite formal. A casual event would probably happen once or twice a month inside of a family's compound. Compound is where an entire extended family lives, and it wasn't just the griots that lived this way. It was just about everyone that I knew would be living with anywhere between 15 and 30 of their extended family members. So you'd be living with aunts, uncles, grandfathers, brothers, sisters, just all the extended family. And so when you were to walk into someone's compound, the walls were usually concrete, so you'd walk through an archway. Sometimes it would have a sliding gate or doors that opened up into the compound, 2 doors. And as soon as you stepped to the other side of the archway, you were still outside. You'd look up and see the sky, even though you're inside of the home. And because these compounds had large courtyards in the middle, and then all the rooms that each nuclear family would have would be out on the walls. And so the courtyard is where a lot of the music would take place. It was rare to see the Kora played solo, like you're seeing now. They would usually be accompanied by other instruments, like the balafon, the wooden xylophone, ngoni, not so much in Gambia, but further south. Typically men would be the ones playing the instruments and women would sing. Within the last 10 to 20 years, more women have been taking on the traditional instruments with increasingly less cultural resistance. If there was a female griot present, otherwise known as a jeli, which is another word for griot, muso, so jeli muso is female griot. If there was a jeli muso present, she would be front and center. And literally it was like she was leading the band. They would all tune to her voice to bring out the best quality of her voice. And you had to do this well ahead of time, just based on how difficult it is to tune these things. Like the balafon, for instance, you would actually have to shave wood off of the keys to tune it. So it's a bit of work. So these informal events would go on for maybe an hour or 2, once a month or so. And then the 2 more formal events that I would see these at would be weddings and naming ceremonies. So a naming ceremony is a 3-part event that starts around 1 or 2 in the afternoon, and it can go all the way until 1 or 2 in the morning the next day. It's a long event. And the first part is where they name the newborn, and they have a feast and then some music. And the naming segment would take about a couple of hours. That would be held in the home where the mother of the newborn child spent her childhood years. She may be living with her husband's extended family at that point, but it might also be flipped the other way around, especially nowadays. And so a griot would be here on a bullhorn saying praise for the newborn, for the family, just kind of bringing up well wishes. And another griot would be going back and forth between the one on the bullhorn and the audience, which might number anywhere between 50 and 200 people, who amongst themselves were kind of congregating and discussing name possibilities. So it was a very communal process, the naming of this newborn child. And so after going back and forth with the audience who was out there for a good hour or so, a consensus was reached, and they would announce the name over the bullhorn, and they'd move on to the feast. So these bowls would get brought out, or about that wide, and 4 to 8 people would sit around and share from together. And it wasn't just at special events. This was like on a day-to-day basis as well. And so you'd see cooked white rice at the bottom of the bowls, which was covered in palm oil. And then you'd have vegetables like carrots, cabbage, cassava, leeks, eggplant, potatoes, things like that. Meat was most often fish or chicken. You see beef or goat meat even brought out for special events. The vegetables were served in very large chunks. So you'd have like a quarter of a cabbage in your bowl, half of a carrot, maybe a part of an eggplant, a large portion. So I found it easiest to use my hand, my right hand, to eat, which is very customary. You could use utensils, which were readily available. So once everything was there, you just, and if there was fish, I should mention that like they just cook a whole fish in tin foil and put it on a grate right on a fire, right above a fire. And so when it was done, each individual fish still intact would go with individual bowls. So you'd have a whole fish right on your bowl just looking at you, waiting for you to eat. So you just kind of mix and match whatever looks appetizing. You kind of make like a sticky ball out of the palm oil saturated rice. And the music, that would go late into the nights. And so a lot of times the kora would be surrounded by other instruments that a lot of you are familiar with, like electric guitars, electric bass, like a drum set that you would see in a jazz band or a rock band, synthesizer style keyboards, and they'd all be plugged into a big soundboard. And that would get pumped into 2 amplifiers, that tall, that wide. Carried more of the feeling of a rock concert once everyone was plugged in. And people would be getting up and dancing throughout the event. And audience engagement was really important for the bands to be able to earn their living. So like eventually, they're probably going to come up to a song that's about a particular person. And these songs typically would go on for 10, 15, 20 minutes. And so the band's just kind of getting comfortable with the rhythm and the melody. And then someone will start singing, the lead singer, whether it be the Jelly Musso, the female griot, or the lead kora player. And they'd start singing praise for whoever the song was written for. And they'd basically be saying like, so-and-so, back in the year 1710, just picking one at random, did X, Y, and Z that was so important for the foundation of this family's lineage. And then they talk about the events from that time that led to the family's lineage being where they are now. I mean, they may be kind of spread out, but it's almost recited in more of an epic kind of a form. And so that would go on for that period. And then towards the end of that explanation, the singer would come back and say, all right, so anyone out there in the audience, if you are a direct descendant of this person who I'm talking about, based on what I shared with you about your family lineage, I would like you to please come up and show your respects in the form of a cash payment. And so at that point, you see a few people from the audience get up, walk towards the band, and someone will have a handful of small bills, and they just start putting it into the calabash of the kora, into that sound hole. There might be a 5-gallon tub out in front of the band that would get some money as well, and others would walk up individually to each of the band members who by that point were probably working up a good sweat. So you might have the lead guitarist get some currency pasted to their sweaty forehead, or another person may get a cap removed and stuffed full of cash and then put back on their head to where the cash was just spilling out their ears and kind of down into their shirt. And at some point there was a transition, meaning like the people that were coming up weren't necessarily related to the bearer of the song. They were just coming up to show their appreciation for the music at that point. And so you'd have people coming back and forth for the rest of the night, more or less. And but the reason I say this is because the people really value the fact that the griots, the historians, are the safekeepers of the history. Like a griot can literally ask someone's last name and be able to tell them about 800 years worth of their family history. And the fact that they're able to do that means a great deal to the people. And so they want to see that their culture is preserved for years to come, and also that the griots are continually able to be financially supported for doing the work that they do. So, in the spirit of audience participation, I would like you all to help me with this next song. This one's called Tira Makan, and this one goes back to the 1200s. Tira Makan helped to gather people together who would then go out and start fighting towards the expansion of the Mandinka Empire. And so there's a call and response singing that goes along with this. And so the response that I would like you to sing along with me has 3 words in Mandinka. Translated mean, the enemy was not successful at piercing Tira Makan with the swords. So for starters, could you please say after me each of the 3 words? The first word is Susa. 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 The second word is Rejo. And the third word is Tira Makan. Good. Susa, Rejo, Tira Makan. Susa, Rejo, Tira Makan. Good. And then, yeah. And so when it's sung, it sounds like this. It goes, Susa, Rejo, Tira Makan. Go ahead and try that. Susa, Rejo, Tira Makan. Again. Susa, Rejo, Tira Makan. So that's the response line. There's 3 call lines that I'll say to lead us into that. The first one is A Muru Yebang Tira Makan. So that means the enemy tried to pierce Tira Makan with a sword. Then we say Susa, Rejo, Tira Makan. They did not succeed. I'll say Kelike Muru Yebang Tira Makan. So that's Kelike, a person, saying the sword is imminent. It's dangerous. We respond again, Susa, Rejo, Tira Makan. The last call line I repeat twice. That one is Ifa, Tira Makan, Iba, Tira Makan. So Ba is mother and Fa is father. So we're saying the mother and father of Tira Makan are wishing him well, hoping he returns safe. And we respond with Susa, Rejo, Tira Makan after each time. So let's try it. So you're just going to come in with me. Susa, Rejo, Tira Makan. It goes. Ah, Muru Yebang Tira Makan. Susa, Rejo, Tira Makan. Kelike Muru Yebang Tira Makan. Susa, Rejo, Tira Makan. Iba, Tira Makan. Ifa, Tira Makan. Susa, Rejo, Tira Makan. Iba, Tira Makan. Ifa, Tira Makan. Susa, Rejo, Tira Makan. That's it. That's it. So we'll go ahead and mix it in with the Kora. Tira Makan.
magani ba tira magani fa tira magan so sa re jo tira magani ba tira magani fa tira magan so sa re jo tira magan.
So I was first introduced to the Kora about 17 years ago. And I came across it in a live performance. Just fell in love with the sound and really was interested in trying to learn. And so I talked with the person who performed that night, who was a student of the instrument, like myself, born and raised in the States. His name was Kane, and I talked with him a couple of weeks after that show and discovered that he was able to teach. I just had to figure out how to get a Kora at that point, which took a little while. So I started going up to his place and having lessons. That went on for about a year and a half or so. And then in 2008, I went back to school to finish up my 4-year degree. And through my school, I was able to get a study contract to go to Gambia for that first trip. And that was for 14 weeks. That was for an entire academic quarter, and got credit towards my music performance degree in ethnomusicology. And so Kane put me in touch with the 2 teachers that I went to work with while I was there. And their names were Moriba Kuyate, and he is the adopted son of my second teacher, the late Malamini Jabate, who passed away between my second and third visits. And I would say between the 2 of them, I received anywhere between 4 and 8 hours of lessons per day. And not only that, I felt like I was taken care of, like I was family. I called Moriba on the phone before that first trip, by Kane's advice, and just said, my name's Sean, and I'm really interested in coming to learn Kora sometime, and more if you teach me, like you did with Kane. And Moriba just said, whenever you're ready, just let us know, and we'll come pick you up at the airport and take you home. And so they took care. They just looked after me in every possible way you can think of. So I owe them a lot for sharing all of this with you. So that said, thank you for giving me the opportunity. Yeah, questions?
What's easiest to play, the fish thing or the harp? I mean, when you do this with your fingers.
Yeah, I don't think that they're really all that much different, because they're both a monofilament line.
Actually, but
yeah, it sounds different. The feeling, those, I really don't notice a difference.
I used to it or something.
Yeah. So, yeah. Anybody else?
Is there sheet music that you
No.
provide?
Yeah. So none of this is written down. Yeah, it's all just passed down orally.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah. In fact, it's really encouraged that every musician give it a different flavor. Right? So I would learn a melody, but then nothing else really. They kind of just expected you to come up with any improvisation that sounded good to you. Which I found a bit perplexing, just based on my musical background as a clarinet player growing up and just having sheet music. But it's just, it's very encouraged that everyone give it their own feeling.
You spoke of the compound,
Yeah.
and are those, are they large, and are they inhabited by one family or multiple multi-families,
Extended families.
extended, it was
Yeah.
extended families.
So yeah, I do like living with your cousins and uncles and everyone else and aunts and so yeah, the size of them, I mean, some of them were probably like maybe from where you're at, if you drew a line there, and then like this whole section back here, probably a little bigger even. Yeah. So.
And the perimeter was where they lived?
Yeah, usually on so like the rooms, you know, were up against the concrete wall, and then they would come out towards the courtyard of the compound. So when you walked into the compound, you were in the courtyard, and you'd have to walk towards the other walls to get to someone's room. Yeah. So, well, listen, I want to thank you all so much for coming out. I want to thank Martin for making this possible. So thank you, Martin, and the Hamtramck Library here. So I do have CDs available for sale.
I was just gonna ask.
Yeah. So over
Because it
here.
sounds like I went to, somebody like Sean Blackwell, a familiar face here in Union. He had people from different, I don't know, I wasn't familiar, but something like that.
Yeah.
About music and kind of segregated together.
Yeah.
That's what it reminds me of.
Oh, cool. Yeah. So the CDs are $15. I can take cash, check, credit card, digital payment like Venmo, PayPal. If you want to pay with cash or check, you can just put either of those forms of payment in here. You don't need to come to me for that. You just take your CD home that way. If you've got credit card or digital payment, do come see me. There's an email list. So if you want to hear me the next time that I'm in the Detroit area, feel free to sign up and I'll let you know the next time that I'm around. And I also have QR codes for each of the ways that you can follow me on social media, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Spotify. So if you want to take a picture of those with your phone on the way out, feel free to do that, and you can follow me that way. This last song is one that I wrote, and it was inspired by a backpacking trip that I took into the Great Smoky Mountains National Park of Western North Carolina, which is only about an hour from where I'm based, and I call it Smoky Mountain Sunset. If you want to take a closer look at the instruments, you're more than welcome to. If you have any more questions, come on up. But thanks again so much.